And Steve, if you don't mind, while I start talking, if you see anybody else, do you mind admitting them into
I
the
will.
room?
I will take care of that.
Awesome. Well, hey everybody, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We're gonna go ahead and get started. You know, it's a Wednesday night. We're getting close to the holidays, and I know some of your classes are done. And if you're a full-time student, full-time working, you're looking forward to that winter break coming up if you get some days off. We're really excited to be talking about PCAP tonight. Um, and Jim Stratton is here, and really, I'm gonna let him take the helm here in a moment. But I want to first say thank you so much for engaging with us. CWCT program is made up of a lot of part-timers and only a couple full-timers as we try and offer this to veterans and the folks of you who are not veterans that made it in this program. We want you all to be able to transition into the cybersecurity field and get gainful employment if you're not already in the field. And one of the ways that we try and do that is to provide career readiness events that sometimes these fireside chats talk about resume building, some talk about other aspects of career readiness like interview prep and salary negotiation. Some talk about apprenticeships and other programs that exist like tonight. And really, I just thank you for engaging. Before we start, I want to remind you that on January 12th, we have our career event coming up. You will receive a link in your email to register for it. It's going to be similar to our last one, informational interviews that you schedule ahead of time for. And we had some great feedback last time. I know a lot of you weren't able to make it to the last one because we didn't have quite enough slots, but we're hoping to be able to expand that come the new year. And I know a few of our students even got job offers from it, and we're able to move forward in the process. So all of these events that we put on is um, really just a way that we're hoping to engage with you all and give you just a little bit of exposure to the climate of the job market these days. It's not just education, it's networking, it's learning about new programs, it's meeting new people, and it's attending things like this. So before I turn it over to Jim, I just want to encourage you all to engage tonight. Jim is an excellent guy and his program is great, but engagement in this is going to be key. So if you have a question, put it in the chat, unmute yourself. The more questions you ask, the better this night's going to be. So please consider this to be a more interactive night in terms of fireside chats that we've done in the past. Jim, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Really excited to hear about your program and everything you have to offer. And it's all yours. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And you should be able to share your presentation if you got one. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Let's see here. All right, did that work out all right?
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I see your
new computer, new settings, so who knows?
Hey, you got yeah, I see Adobe. I see your presentation in Adobe. That's awesome.
Okay. Well, so as Steve said, I just want to talk a little bit about our apprenticeship program. I work with a group at main campus Purdue and West Lafayette called the Technical Assistance Program. We are an outward-facing arm of the university that was founded in 1986, primarily to help manufacturers. However, over the years, that kind of spun off into healthcare. Through healthcare, kind of spun into cyber. And so now the Technical Assistance Program has multiple arms, of which I work for the Cyber Technical Assistance Program. Purdue received this grant in 2019, so this might not be unfamiliar to everybody here. This might have been something you've seen of or heard of. Our group, CyberTap, took over administration of this grant in early 22, late 21. So coming on almost exactly a year now. And so we've kind of revamped the program. We've simplified the program. We've worked with DOL extensively, Department of Labor, for almost, well, a year, trying to get this a little bit more of an approachable experience for people. So I'm going to talk a little bit just about what it is, how to engage, and then if anybody has any questions, I'm kind of the point person for the grant right now, so everything funnels down to me, so that's kind of the easiest way to approach it. But anyway, I'm going to give you an overview. Like I said, this is a Department of Labor grant. It was, I think in total, not just our portion, but nationwide, $100 million effort signed into existence under Trump And the idea was to create apprenticeship programs around the country that were scalable and focused on key sectors that need attention. And so cybersecurity was one of those areas of attention. We are one of, I believe, 22 or 23 other cyber apprenticeship programs out there. So, I'd say it's competition, but it's not. There, I'll get into a little bit just the workforce gap and kind of, I'm sure it's familiar to you guys as well. But the whole premise behind the program is that you earn while you learn. So there is a employment component to it. You're learning while you're doing it. And so it separates itself a little bit from an internship in that, an internship you might be doing on the job training, but you're not necessarily learning while you're doing it with a formal education component. And so the way our program works is you receive formal education through Purdue. You don't have to be enrolled as a student, but we'll get into that. We define on-the-job training, and then over the course of 3 or 4 months, you take your courses, you do your on-the-job training, and then you exit the program. But really, the purpose and the reason DOL approached this effort was there is a giant workforce gap in cybersecurity, and so traditionally, when people think of apprenticeship, they think of the trades, blacksmith. That's why I put the image of the fellow there on the side. But people typically think of blue collar trades where welding or carpentry or whatever, where you're kind of learning as you go. And the idea is if we can't fill workforce gaps with fresh students out of college or trade school or whatever, why can't we just upskill and reskill people that are already in the workforce and move them into that cyber role? And so part of what we've kind of focused the effort on for outreach is kind of looking at those incumbent workers or people who might not be traditionally cyber people. Our team, I can attest, our team here at CyberTap, I would say maybe a third to a quarter of the people on our staff are traditional cyber people. I am not a cyber person. I was a mechanical engineering technology grad from Purdue College of Technology. And so, you don't have to be a cyber person to be involved with cyber. And so if we can upskill or reskill people who have the interest, we can address the workforce gap while we're, along the way. And so, another major shift in the program was we moved towards unregistered apprenticeships. So the Department of Labor looks at 2 different types of apprenticeship, registered and unregistered. Registered involve a ton of paperwork. Your employer has to commit to I think it's 2,000 hours on the job training. The way the grant was originally written, the employer was on the hook for covering the education expense, and it had to be at least a 4-year degree. So I don't know about anybody on this call, but I don't imagine there's many employers out there who would be willing to pay for a 4-year degree and 2,000 hours of on-the-job training at their expense. And so we shifted the program away from registered apprenticeships to unregistered apprenticeships. And what that did is it allows us to define shorter education components, and we can define then the length of on-the-job training that's required. So we can make it as simple or as difficult as our students or the employers would like. And so we've seen a lot of success when we've kind of revamped it that way. But the idea is that you can do a quick return, you can still work, you can still be involved with your employer. You're not removed from your day-to-day duties to go do a 4-year degree. And it just makes the overall program, I think, a lot more approachable. And we've seen quite a bit of success now that we've done that. So I mentioned that workforce gap, and I actually just updated these numbers this morning. But there are currently 770,000 open cybersecurity jobs, and roughly 40,000 of those are in the public sector. So if you don't know what cyberseek.org is, I highly suggest you check it out. For those of you who are in Indiana, cyberseekindiana.org. I think it's just cyberseekin.org. But what you can do, it's a really neat site. You can kind of zone in on your state. I think it goes down to county level. But what the website does is it's an aggregate kind of search tool. It looks at all job postings on, the major job posting websites, LinkedIn, Indeed, you name it. And it looks for keywords that involve cybersecurity and aggregates all of that into a heat map that I've got here on the screen, but then also job descriptions of what's most needed in which areas and which counties. And you can really hone in on, what's needed in your area. So whether or not you're trying to, define your career path or find a career path, great resource. So I highly suggest you check that out. And it's a great tool for kind of figuring out what's around you. Let's skip that. So the 5 hallmarks of the apprenticeship program, as DOL defines it, all 5 of these things have to be met in order to qualify in this apprenticeship program. So there needs to be a paid work-based component. And what that means is typically you have to be employed, and you have to be employed at federal minimum level, so at least minimum wage. Through that position, we define on-the-job training and mentorship. So the mentorship is a big piece of any apprenticeship, but especially in our case, it's kind of tricky to define because we have people who are in the apprenticeship program who are self-employed, who we have some that are students. And so how do you define that mentor? So it could be, if you're not in a traditional IT or tech role, it could be somebody in the IT or tech department that's adjacent to what you're doing. It could be a faculty member. It could be somebody on our staff. We actually set aside part of our grant budget to provide mentorship for people who don't have it. But what that person essentially does is kind of oversees and helps define your on-the-job training, and then kind of establish milestones to help you through it. So if you have questions, if you have technical questions, if you need a subject matter expert, that's kind of where your mentor comes in. And since we've kind of revamped the program, we've done basically every combination you can make up with mentors. And so, part of the process is to define, hey, who's a good mentor for you? Is it somebody you currently work with? Is it somebody on our staff? As far as the educational instructional component, that is really open for interpretation, but it ties into the next bullet point in that it has to lead to an industry recognized credential. So if that is, it could be your degree path. You're on a degree path to an industry recognized credential that is a bachelor's, master's, you name it. We have a fairly deep catalog, which I'll get into here in a little bit, of some courses that we offer to our industry partners that lead to basically a badge. So it's a digital badge. It's portable, but the education piece has to lead towards something. So it could even be a certification. So like CISP, Sec Plus, that's an industry recognized credential. So, and then beyond that, safety supervision, equal opportunity, equal employment opportunity. I mean, that's all pretty standard stuff, but DOL wants to check that box as well. So as long as all 5 of those components are met with respect to the apprenticeship program, then we can proceed. And like I said, we pushed through 350 people in the last 6 months. And I can attest that this is not really anything that's challenging to define. So if it does seem overwhelming, it's definitely not.
Hey, Jim, do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I just want to, we got some chat going on, so I figure I could just
yeah. Please. Yeah.
So I've got one person asking, Jose's asking, he already works in IT, but
Right.
not in an exclusive cyber role. Can I do this apprenticeship part-time?
Yeah. So the apprenticeship itself is not necessarily time-based. So all of the coursework that we offer through our internal curriculum is designed to be delivered remotely for working professionals. So it's not something you got to show up at 2 p.m. every day for lecture. There are a couple the range-based courses where you actually get into range activities where you would need to take a day because they're full 8-hour days. But beyond that, the on-the-job training, the agreements we've done so far have been 1 to 2 hours a week of on-the-job training. So it's a pretty easily defined and not intrusive to your day-to-day work. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I think we got one more question
Mhm.
from John and Evans. Already in the field as a cybersecurity engineer. Can I apply for PCAP? I'm assuming the answer is yes, based on your last response.
Yeah, so, and I'll get into how to engage here in a little bit, because there's a couple different ways to do it depending on kind of what your current status is. But yeah, I think I'll be answering that question very shortly. Actually, maybe next slide. So
Awesome.
And
Thanks for
then,
the pause. Go ahead, Amber.
oh,
yeah,
sorry, I actually got a private question. Is it possible to do any of these apprenticeships virtually?
yeah. So I mean, we've got people right now all over the country. And so it's all virtual. So you're engaging with your current employer. You're not necessarily needing to be on campus or in any other physical location besides your employer. So, and the education that we offer, the courses that we offer are all delivered remote or can be delivered remote. So yeah, it's a completely in your ballpark.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. Cool.
And then, oh, we had one more
Oh,
question in
yep,
chat,
yep.
Steve. Oh, okay, I'll go for it.
Oh,
Someone who's
yeah,
currently
go
active
ahead.
duty, can they also apply if they're currently active duty military?
That's a fantastic question, because I'm actually in the middle of working with an active duty person right now. And as long as chain of command is okay with it, we can do it. So there's nothing in the grant that restricts us from working with government personnel, including military. We just have to make sure that chain of command's cool with it, because obviously they've got some vested interest in you doing, you know, cybersecurity training and or on the job training. And so we're currently working through our first agreement that involves active duty personnel, but so far it hasn't. It's more of a logistics right now than a procedural issue. So yeah, that active duty does work.
And I think kind of going along with those logistics, then somebody who's currently stationed overseas, there's the potential that they could do it. It would just be working out those logistics.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there might be some time zone issues with scheduling if it's a, live instructor course, or, if there's any weird deadlines, but if you're already overseas, I'm sure you're already managing those time differences. But yeah, that's fine.
And then one other question that we had in
Mhm.
chat would be, how would an employer benefit from their participant being in this apprenticeship program?
So that's another great question. So the primary benefit is the employer doesn't have to pay anything. And I'm going to get into that here in a little bit. But also, I mean, I've had every apprentice that's come through, I've had a conversation with them, their leadership team or boss or whoever. And so far, everybody's leadership has been tickled that they're taking not only incentive to learn something new, because it could be professional development, it could be considered cross training. Most companies we've worked with are happy that one of their people are trying to move into their IT and tech department because they're short staffed anyway. And so we typically sell it as, like I said, cross training, upskilling, reskilling, it even could be a career change within. But companies are usually very happy to do those activities and keep people they've already hired. From an on-the-job training standpoint, I'd say most, I think it's probably safe to say every conversation about on-the-job training has happened in conjunction with that same leadership team. And so we try to define something that complements both what the student's learning and something that could benefit the company. So it might be, a lot of times we hear, oh man, nobody's updated our firewall in 6 months. And so we might define the on-the-job training as, hey, why don't you start reviewing some of the firewall rules, put some policies and procedures around it. And you've got something that the students learning how to do it. The company's benefit, the benefit to the company is that they're getting an updated, firewall privileges. And so, and then lastly, I think the fact that they aren't paying for it is also a huge incentive or benefit. So.
And so how do you get into this space? Because I'm very, very interested in this.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, because we're getting into there. A couple more slides and we'll be there.
Yeah, Jim, I think
Yep.
we've got more questions in the chat too. So, and
Yeah,
Henry, thanks for the question. I would say just roll on because we're
Okay.
getting some questions about like company matches after the program, paperwork for their command. It's great questions, but I want to let you kind of roll on for a while and then
Right.
we'll circle back around. So I'm gonna
I
let you
think
keep going
I'm
through your
probably
slides.
going to answer all that within 2 slides. So
Cool. Yeah. So I'm
like
gonna
I
let
said,
you roll on.
I butchered this presentation this morning, so I'm not exactly sure the flow, but we'll get there.
It's all good. I appreciate you being here. Yeah, just keep rolling.
Okay, so for apprentices, the demographic restrictions must be citizen or green card holder, must be at least 18 years of age. We say employed preferably in IT or cyber only because it's nice to have that foundational understanding of what IT and cyber are, but we're not limited to that. So we've had a number of people that have come directly out of manufacturing roles, non-tech, non-cyber. Some of our off-the-shelf courses are designed for people who, hey, I know what a firewall is, I know what an IP address is, but that's the extent of my technical knowledge. And so we have courses that start from that and move up. I would say also on the employment, this includes internships, past or present. So we recently, earlier this fall, we pushed a cohort of Purdue students through who had completed an internship in a tech field over the summer. And so for on-the-job training, we were able to count what they did for the internship, because the definition of an internship is basically on-the-job training. And then we were able to provide coursework at no cost to the students that came through. And so even though they weren't currently employed in that internship, they just had to show documentation that they had the internship and were paid at least minimum wage. So that was a DOL approved edit to the program that has been fairly successful so far. I think the most important thing is apprentices cannot fund their own education. So the grant specifically states that either the employer has to pay for it or PCAP has to pay for it. And so when CyberTab took over the administration of the grant, we set aside almost 80% of the remaining funds to cover tuition. And so I'd say rough math comes out to about $2,000 ahead of what we can cover. Give or take. There's been instances where somebody's selected some courses from our current catalog and it's been $2,100, $2,200. Like that's fine. But on average, we can cover about $2,000 worth of education per student. So it's substantial, and given our catalog, that can go pretty far. And so let's see here. As far, we kind of got into this. I think this is kind of going to be a repeat of some of the questions, but we can go through it. So obviously upskilling and reskilling incumbent workers. I mentioned the cross training, and so most employers are pretty happy if we can get somebody cross trained in tech or cyber, because overall it increases the vigilance around the company. If more people are aware, more people have eyes on the problem, it's a benefit to everybody, no matter how you cut it. But also we've got some resources for people who are currently unemployed and want to get into cybersecurity. We do have some resources for that, and I will talk about that right here, actually. So, and then maybe after this slide, we'll open it for questions, because I think this will be another point where there might be more questions. But there are basically 3 ways you can come to our program. If you are currently unemployed and looking for a job, we have a portal at purdue.edu/pcap/portal. And I'll put the web link up later. In this portal, you can register, kind of create an account, and then there's a number of skills assessments in there that'll kind of quantify your cyber skill level. And what we do with this portal is we present this to industry partners who come to Purdue or come to us and say, hey, we need 15 people in a cybersecurity role, IT role. We can then point them to this portal and say, hey, we've got, I think right now we've got 2,500 people in there-ish. Say, hey, here's a pool of candidates who are interested, who are ready, who are currently unemployed, looking for, you know, a new gig in cyber. And then based on what the company wants, we, you know, because of those skills assessments that we have, they can hand select people out of that portal then as a potential new hire. So it's kind of it's not a guaranteed route, obviously. I mean, nothing like that's guaranteed, but it's at least a leg up and another resource, and you might be in front of people you might not be through Indeed. You know, we've actually, a number of our students or students that our group has worked with, we've pointed that direction. You know, just as it's somewhere else to hang your hat and hope that somebody will, you know, see your resume. So if you're coming to us as an employed individual, basically you'll talk to me. We'll figure out kind of what your ambitions are. Then we'll have a discussion with, you know, your leadership team, your manager, your boss, whoever it might be, your mentor. And then we'll work with that person to create an apprenticeship program at your company. And so once we create that program, then you become an apprentice on it. And from there, I guess Bob's your uncle, we do the education, on the job training, and go from there. I will say, and I'll talk about it a little bit when we get into some of the curriculum stuff, the more the merrier. You know, if you currently work in a group and you've got 3 or 4 people you work with who are all interested in the same thing, we really don't have a limit right now as far as how many people we can push through this. In fact, we're kind of challenging people to find our limit, because I mean, we've got a hefty stash of grant money right now that we're looking to spend. So the more the merrier. I actually just signed a cohort of, I think, 8 people that'll be coming through. They're all kind of IT related. We created 2 tracks. So 1 track for the more novice people, and then a kind of a mid-level track for those who are a little more experienced. So if there are people you work with who would also want to come through, we're happy to. This isn't just an individual program, so we can scale it as needed. So I'm going to stop there for a second, because I think there might be some more questions coming in, and then we'll pick back up.
All right, so I have a question, Jim. First of all, thank you so much for this information. Right? Can you, if you have a LinkedIn account, can you please drop that into the chat so we can connect?
Yeah, so if you, I don't have the link right on me right now, but if you just Google my name and Purdue, it should pop up pretty high up there.
All right, I'll look it up. And also, Steve, I added you on LinkedIn as well too. This Purdue opportunity, in my opinion, I see it as a big networking opportunity, and an opportunity to actually learn a little bit more about the space. Me personally, I'm trying to break into the cyberspace as much as possible, going through boot camps, going to college, going to CWC, any way possible. So for me, for what I see from this, the ability to really connect with an employer that's looking for somebody to fit in the role in cybersecurity, that's a big benefit to me, in my opinion. Unless I'm looking at this a different way.
No, I think you're right. You know, we've been able to engage with a number of employers through this, and also a number of individuals, and it's definitely a more, I don't know if efficient's the right word, but it's definitely a new way to kind of connect people who want to get into this space, because you know, particularly with that portal, you know, if a company comes to us or one of our partners comes to us and says, hey, I need 10 people, they don't have to weed through people who are not interested in cybersecurity or tech, right? They have a list of, I think latest count was somewhere like 2,500 people who are solely interested in cybersecurity. Then they can sort by location, by skill level, but whatever they want. And then we can, you know, kind of give them that list of candidates that they can select from. So it's definitely for people who are eager to get into cybersecurity, it's a great way.
And for me, right, I'm interested in trying to be an ethical hacker, penetration tester.
Mhm.
Is this the right route to go about it?
You say, is this the right route?
Yes.
I mean, I don't think there is a wrong route. I think if you know, if you're heading down that path and you're picking up the skill set, I don't think it's a wrong route. You know, the more well-rounded you can be will make you a better person in either of those scenarios. So, yep.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, Jim, I got a few more questions if I could field some for you.
Yeah.
So I got one. Is there some sort of job or company match after completing the PCAP program, or is it your own to find your next opportunity?
Are you talking from as a job seeker?
I
Is that
believe
the
so. Could maybe, do you want to chime in and clarify?
because I wouldn't say like we are not the matchmaker between the like a job seeker in cyber and the company for a number of reasons, and biggest being that Purdue has more lawyers than students. So we don't like being that selection. You know, we leave it up to the company to select. Um, and if you're coming to us as somebody who's already employed, I mean, there's not really a matchmaking effort going on there. It's more of a program definition at that point. So, I mean, there might be instances where, you know, if you're a job seeker and we know you on a personal enough level that we can suggest something or maybe, you know, make that connection, then yeah, but that's been rare. I mean, usually it's, you know, if a company's looking for people, we can say, hey, here's 10 people that meet your criteria, but you have to select that.
Well, that's a perfect answer, Jim. I appreciate
Okay.
that. I'm gonna keep rolling just because we've got a lot of them here. How long will PCAP take before finishing up the program?
So it really, I mean, it depends on the education piece. We've got some courses that are 4 weeks in duration. Some of the range-based activities are a day. So it really depends on what track you're taking and what the education piece entails. And then from there, you know, the on-the-job training, we don't like to define on-the-job training any less than 40 hours because we feel like it has to be somewhat meaningful for both the learner and the employer. And so 40 hours is kind of the minimum that we like to define. And then depending on how eager the learner or the company are, we don't like to go over maybe 2 hours a week of on-the-job training. So you're not pulling somebody out of their role for an entire day. And then spread that 40 hours out over, you know, a couple months. So we've had some that we've defined almost 200 hours on the job training, but they had very specific needs of what they wanted. So, you know, it was a case by case basis at that point. They had a very predefined list of wants of things that they wanted their apprentice to do. And so it ended up being a 200 hour over, I think it was 6 months, five or 6 months. So it varies, but I think that's kind of the, if you're looking at the limits, that's kind of the limits.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, do you have, are you open to just offering some contact information for our students so that they can reach
Yeah.
out to you?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to drop that in the chat or something. I have a feeling we're not going to get to all of our, oh, perfect.
Yep.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
I'm doing my best to get to all our questions, but we may not get to all of them tonight. So
Yeah, no
I'm
worries.
sure that if you're open to it, that you all that are listening in know that you can contact Jim, and if you've got follow-up questions about PCAP or eligibility requirements, because I've got some questions about you know, deadlines, working for the military, how competitive it is, and I think those are good questions for you, you know, how to set yourself apart, you know. I do have one I'll ask you right now. Can you explain a bit more in terms of technicalities in terms of education? I think really what Vinod is asking is kind of what are some of the hot topics that are covered in PCAP
So
in terms of like hard skills, you know?
yeah. So let me just jump into I'll talk about our curriculum, and then I'll talk about some alternative tracks that other people have done, just to kind of give that. So our ACE core series that we offer off the shelf, this is all content that we've created. It's Purdue accredited, but it's not a Purdue degree path. So, like I said at the beginning, we primarily work with industry clients. And so this is designed that they can take courses from Purdue without having to become a Purdue student. So to preface that, so the ACE core series is what I would call our entry level or introductory level. 4 courses involved in the series. Each course is 4 weeks in duration. So you're looking at 16 weeks of coursework here. But it's all asynchronous, and each course has about 40 hours of content. So 10 hours a week is kind of what you would expect to commit towards this if you were going to take one of these classes. And so it is designed to be something that you could do off the clock, after hours, maybe even over break time, stuff like that. So it does get into some technical topics, but it's not necessarily what I would call hard skills. It still would be on the more general foundational understanding of the topic. That being said, though, there are labs involved that do require a little bit of, knowledge of hard skills, but it's definitely not a hard skill type of course. Once we move out of that, we've got our ACE Defender series. We've actually changed the name on these a little bit, but premise is the same. So we've got total of, there's these 4, and then we've got at least 4 others maybe. But these are the beginnings of our range-based training. And this is what I would definitely say gets into hard skill type activity. We've got a Cyberbit range. And for those who don't know Cyberbit, they're an Israeli company that is heavy into cybersecurity. And they make a cyber range that's basically I don't really like the term sandbox, but it's a live environment where you get to experience a cyber attack in real time. And you have to threat hunt, figure out where, what's happening, what's been exfiltrated, how to stop the attack. And so, for instance, let's talk about this first one. So we've actually renamed this 302, but same idea. So basically it's 2 days on the range. You've got, and actually we've changed the time a little bit there, but like I said, it still translates. But over the 2 days, you'll experience 3 different live action scenarios and have to figure out what happened. And then, there's kind of some quizzes after the fact of you have to unpack, kind of do a SWOT analysis of what happened. Most of these are team-based events. So even if you're coming through as an individual, we'll probably schedule you into a cohort with other people. So you'll be on it's kind of team-based a little bit. Or if you're coming from let's say your employer, maybe there's 5 of you that are coming through, we'll just push all you through as a cohort. So everybody's learning and experiencing the same thing, and you can kind of relate it back to what you're seeing at work or wherever else. And then this is kind of our blue team catalog. Like I said, there's 2 other, I would say, more entry level than these. And then there's 2 more, I think there's 2 or 3 others that are kind of a more experienced level beyond this. But so there's at least maybe 8 in varying level of difficulty blue team scenarios that or courses that we can push you through. Then we've got this is our red team activities. And so we do have 2 red team courses. These are definitely geared towards experienced cyber professionals. So people who are, already on a SOC team, kind of career people. And we can dial up or dial down the difficulty. That's the kind of nice thing about the environment is we can change the difficulty on the fly. So if groups coming through and they, are having a hard time, we can kind of dial back the traffic and make it a little more accessible, but we can also dial it up if a team's having too easy of a time, and make it a little more challenging. So, and then outside of that, we've got a ransomware scenario that's a 1-day range course, so it's an 8-hour day. You experience a ransomware attack, and this is, I was kind of talking about the benefits to the employer. We've run a couple of these where they'll bring apprentices into the program who are definitely not cyber people, definitely not tech people, but might be C-suite, might be, other leadership or, kind of decision makers. And they'll bring them in on the ransomware scenario. And part of the scenario is, do you pay? And so these companies they'll kind of practice their playbook, play it off the scenario, see if their playbook makes sense. And so it's a kind of interesting way to get non-cyber people involved in cybersecurity. We had a school district in northern Indiana that brought through their superintendent just to observe the scenario and see, how challenging and how kind of what their cyber team deals with every day, but also to see how quickly it can happen, what the impact is, and kind of a demonstration of their value to the leadership. Like, hey, this is why we need a budget, because this is how quickly it can happen. And now we have to figure out how to get out of the situation. So it's a kind of unique offering. And that's not currently listed on this presentation, but if you go to our website, it is on
Can I ask a question?
there. Mhm.
So I definitely aspire to be in a red team, right?
Mhm.
That's really what I want to do. But do you have to learn some blue team perspective of things in order for you to understand the scope of a red team?
So I would say, I think follow up with me after this for sure. But I think, it really depends on your current skill level, your current knowledge base. I think, you could check on our website. I'll check too. We used to have a kind of a skills assessment on each of these scenarios. And if you score high enough on the skills assessment, it means you probably could handle the actual scenario. But we can, reach out to me offline and we can kind of talk through that and see if that is something that's appropriate. But kind of our guidance to most people is you have to be really good at blue team in order to be really good at red team. So, if you know the tools and kind of the layout of the network and all of that ahead of time, and you know it like the back of your hand, now you know how to go in from the other direction. So, but yeah, I mean, why don't you reach out to me and we can kind of carry that conversation and see if that is something that'd be appropriate. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely on the more advanced side of things. We pushed some of our staff through it just for giggles, and even though they've been doing this for decades, we're still very challenged. So.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm gonna go distance on that one, so I'll hit you up on that. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Hey, Jim, quick
Jim, I
questions
have a
as well here.
question regarding entering the program.
Mhm.
So there's nothing really saying step by step. I mean, your presentation is definitely clear. There's either one role, you go in as employed with your employer, and then
Yep.
the other one would be unemployed, right? So
Right.
do you create the profile on the website, and then
Yeah.
let's say I'm going in unemployed, which is my situation. So I
Right.
just create my profile, take the knowledge assessment tests, and then just sit back and wait for an employer to pick me?
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, that's the extent of the job seeking route. Because like I said, we have to kind of remain hands off on that. But we've had a number of people who have enrolled in the portal, and whether or not they got the job through the portal or elsewhere, the moment they got hired on, they reached out to us and said, hey, I got a job in tech or cyber or IT or you name it. And then we push them into the program from there. So unfortunately, if you're coming in as a job seeking person, right now it's kind of a sit and wait activity, but whether you do get employed through the portal or through other means, the moment you get that job, you know, reach out. And we've actually had a couple people who have come through the program after reaching out to us as an unemployed person. And what they did is they told, during the interview, said, hey, if you hire me on, I can get some on-the-job training and free education through this Purdue apprenticeship program. And that was actually a selling factor in their interview that, hey, not only do I have these skills coming into the job, but I'm already looking at potential, training that you guys don't have to pay for. And it will complement what I'm going to do for you. So that is a sell in the application process or the interview process. And actually in one of those cases, we actually kind of worked with granted the person got employed, but then, some of the things that they talked about, we pitched as their actual training for the position. So there are routes there.
How big is your pool? How's my profile in there with 1,000, 2,000 other people?
Honestly, so there are parts of the, we collect a lot of PPI or PII. And so we actually encrypt a lot of that we can't really access some of the details. But it's, like I said earlier, it's about as competitive as anywhere else, except for the fact that people coming to the, employers that are coming to us and looking into that portal have a much more condensed pool of cyber people than they would if they were trying to search Indeed or LinkedIn or wherever else. So it is concentrated in that. Purdue has a huge network of, corporate partners. And so they're already coming to Purdue as a trusted resource. And so I think from that perspective, it might not be as competitive, like you said, because you're still in a pool of 2,500-ish people. But you're in a concentrated pool of people who are coming to Purdue to look for that kind of talent. So it's I'd say you're not as washed out as you would be anywhere else. But like I said, we've had people who have come to the portal, who got hired elsewhere and said, called me up and said, hey, got my job, let's do some training. So
that's great. Now how do you pitch this to the employer that just hired you? What's in it for them?
So I think really it goes back to kind of what I said earlier. They don't have to pay for it. The on-the-job training benefits both people. It benefits the company and it benefits you, and we define it that way intentionally up front. So, like I said, we would have that conversation with your manager, leadership, whoever it might be, and define something that complements what you're learning, but it also complements what your employer needs. So the example I used was a company that they knew they needed some firewall changes or edits or just some attention on their firewall. And so we defined that as on-the-job training. The apprentice was kind of new to that world, and the employer needed it done. So it was there's a mutually beneficial aspect to it. So I'd say that's probably your biggest pitch, is that, your on-the-job training can really be what your day-to-day duties are. We tell people all the time, if you're an IT, tech, cyber, you're learning something new every day. And so by definition of what you're doing in your job description, that pretty much is on-the-job training. So it's not like we're doing something completely out of left field. Now, if you're we actually have two people, potentially two. We have one current person who's currently in a very manufacturing heavy role who wants to move into IT or cyber. And so the way we've structured the on-the-job training in that case is more as a job shadowing. So for 2 hours a week, that person's going to job shadow with the IT department. So in that case, yes, you really are pulling somebody out of their current duties. But if you're already in IT or tech, what you're doing every day is probably already considered on-the-job training.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you for answering my questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Jim. This is Vinod here. Currently, I'm a full-time working in a financial firm in the field of AI, ML, towards help desk support automation kind of a thing. I'm very much into education, IT and stuff for the last 2 decades. But cyber was something I've been looking for quite some time, but it's an ocean that it's pretty tough to concentrate one area, so I could not do it. This program is helping me to streamline my ideas and thoughts towards it. I'm sure at the firm level, I won't get any support from my management for the like on-job kind of a thing. So persons like me, finding a job is not a problem as per my knowledge is concerned, even in the area, but getting the right job and the job that is interested for you is something I'm unable to clear off myself in the field of cyber, because it's really, really vast. So how can a person like me can get into the apprentice program?
So you said you think your management would not be supportive?
It's legally like too many headaches will be there. It's not easy to get an approval from a hierarchy. It's very tough.
Gotcha.
It's a pure financial firm. I mean, they don't even sponsor my PhD. To get that, I'm the final stage of a PhD, and even to get the approval for the budgeting and payment for my fees, usually they have a procedure. It's been a year or two. I'm trying for that. It did not match up. So it's very hard in the hierarchy to get that approvals.
So I think the challenge would even be before on-the-job training, given what you're saying, because when we establish a program, we actually establish the program with your employer, and then through that you become the apprentice. So, I think maybe the first step would just be to throw that out there. Say, hey, would you support the apprenticeship? Because step one is working with them to establish the program. And so if they're willing to support that, they would probably be willing to support something else. But if they say no, I mean, it's kind of dead on arrival.
No, they will never say no, but it goes into the paper trail for next 1 year or two. I know that.
Right.
They will never say no for it. Oh, we have sent this to next hierarchy, all the way to the executive director or managing director, and it never come back.
Right.
I've experienced in the last 2 years. So.
Well, and another thing I'll throw out there, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's important to talk about. Our paperwork to get this started is very simple. So there's one agreement that your boss or whoever in your company has signature authority would have to sign. But it's not a contract. There's nothing binding. There's no exchange of money. There's nothing. So that document establishes the program. Once the program's established, the rest of the document is basically between you or your boss, whoever's going to be your mentor or kind of serve like overseeing your apprenticeship. And that's all that needs is a initials. So it's not like that even has to go up the chain. And so, if that does ease that onboarding effort, I mean, I'm happy to have a conversation with you or whoever you think might be receptive to it, because I think if we show that agreement, they'd be surprised at how simple it is to actually establish.
Sure.
I throw that out there to everybody who's listening. If you think you're on the fence, or your company or your employer might be on the fence, let me know. I mean, I've had at this point hundreds of these conversations, and so I'm happy to go through that. So let me know.
Hey, Jim, I got a question. Has an employer ever denied an individual to participate in the program? And if so, what happens from there if you still want to participate?
No, I mean, today, we've had a couple that just fizzled for whatever reason. I mean, you're always going to have attrition, but we've never had anybody that goes, oh no, this is an awful idea. By the time, we haven't had any that were like, didn't want to commit to it, or, I think the ones that fizzled were just because it was, I don't know, communication issues internally. But all of the ones that have signed, a good portion of those kind of started in that same, like, I don't know if my boss will support this, but 9 times out of 10, by the time we talk to that leadership team, they're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. So the ones that have failed have not failed because of the content of the program. It's usually been internal things to the company that are hindrances.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Jim, I appreciate your responses, and I know we've had a lot of questions tonight. We've got like 3 minutes left,
Mhm.
so I'd kind of like to just open it up to anybody that's in the room out of the 85 people we got. Feel free to come off mute, ask a question, but you know, I want to kind of start winding down, and
Yep.
so final questions for Jim. I really appreciate you being here tonight. Before we sign off, just kind of open it up to anybody that's got questions for Jim while we got him.
I have a
Hello.
question. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, just for my personal understanding. So the program, you work within your own employer to get the experience. Like, what if they don't? What if there's no IT department within your organization? Like, if it's elsewhere?
Right. So that's a good question because we have encountered that quite a bit. But the short answer is, if you do not have an IT team in-house, that's okay. Because if you don't have a mentor, we can provide that mentor, and you can still do very high-level cybersecurity related tasks that can still benefit your company. Whether it's policy development, it could be work from home policy, even hardware reviews. I mean, we've defined everything under the sun. So even if there's not a specific tech IT cyber team, there's still something we can define that can help without that. And if you don't have a mentor, we have people on our staff that can act as that. So that's usually not a challenge.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm sorry. Didn't get the opportunity to be here as soon as this session started. So if you
Mhm.
might have mentioned it, my apologies for repeating it, or it might have been asked. So is this a program that can only be done through an employer? Because I
Ye-
have heard a lot of conversation, employer, and I might have misunderstood when I initially saw the email in regards to this program. It sounds like you have to get your employer involved in order
Right.
to participate in this program. Do I
So
have that right?
I think the short answer is yes. For a full-blown apprenticeship program, that is the case. But if you are looking for a job, we've got the portal. So on the screen right now, there's at the bottom, it says visit the PCAP portal. That's for you. You can register, make an account. And then if employers are looking for people, we can point them towards that portal and say, hey, these people in the portal are interested in a cybersecurity job. Here's their skills assessment, and then if they choose to hire whomever they want, then that's on them. So there are resources available, but I would say the bulk to fully exploit the benefits of the program, employment is definitely the way to go.
Oh, okay.
I have another question. I see that
Mhm.
it says corporate or government partners. Does that mean that you already have established networks with those agencies, with certain agencies?
Yeah, so I mean, Purdue has a very vast network of corporate and government partners. CyberTap, ourselves, we've got a fairly extensive network. And so, that would be if you're a decision maker at one of those companies, it's basically the same outreach process. It's just one level up, but same thing. If you're a small business owner, you'd fall in that corporate or government partner bucket, and then either way, you're still contacting me. I just create the agreement with you, and then your employees would be apprentices on the program. So, or I'd point you to the portal and say, hey, if you need people, here's where you can find them. So that's kind of why that is broken out as a separate bullet point.
Well, Jim, I don't want to cut anybody off, but I just want to thank you for your time tonight. We really appreciate having you, and for all the CWCT students that came out tonight, just thanks for making the time on a Wednesday night. I know some of you have class tonight, and I know some of you may have skipped out, but also congrats on making it this far if you're in the program right now. And again, thank you for taking the time on a Wednesday night to come out here and listen to Jim and listen to me talk. And we wish you the best of luck. But I hope you've, if nothing else, gleaned tonight that we are here to help you out. Jim has a great program through Purdue, but this is a consortium. So between 5 universities, we've got a lot of people who do this part-time for very few hours a week, but we really want to help you out. And that goes from looking at your resume, helping you out with networking, looking for the jobs, and finding the right program for you, whether it's this one or another. And Jim, thank you so much for your time tonight. And I want to say thank you to all our CWCT students that came out. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. And like I said, reach out to me if you got questions. I'm happy to carry the conversation. So thanks for having me.